This episode is brought to you by the Marine Corps Association and Foundation. The Marine Corps Association is committed to our mission of providing resources for professional military education and esprit de corps. If you like what we're doing, consider donating. There are multiple ways to give, such as our year-end giving. Join our year-end matching gift challenge by donating to the Marine Corps Association by December 31st. Your tax-deductible donation will be tripled, going 3 times as far to fund professional development programs for Marines. Every gift strengthens our Corps. Give today at mca-marines.org/donate-to-MCAF and help shape tomorrow's Marine leaders.
Hey Scuttlebutt listeners, this is episode 172. This week is a continuation of our 20th anniversary of Fallujah II, Operation Phantom Fury programming. We welcome Colonel Willie Buhl to the show. Colonel Buhl is a veteran of Operation Phantom Fury. He was the commanding officer of Task Force 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines at the battle. Colonel Buhl shares with us his experiences in Fallujah and his thoughts on the battle 20 years later. We are truly honored that he was willing to share the details of his story with us. We hope you find it as informative as you do engaging. Here is episode 172.
Hey everybody, thank you for tuning in. This is a audio recording for the Marine Corps Association of the Battle of Fallujah, known here in the States as Operation Phantom Fury, also known as the Second Battle of Fallujah or Fallujah II. And I'm so honored to be welcoming Colonel Buhl to the show. Colonel Willie Buhl, sir, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much for having me aboard, Vic. It's an honor. It's an honor on this end.
This is really great. I guess sort of tangentially, I went to a media day at the Marine Corps Museum not too long ago to get a sort of behind the scenes of the new OEF exhibit that just opened this Sunday, October 6th, and it is breathtaking. And then we had Jeremiah Workman on our podcast not too long ago. So I really appreciate you being a part of this project. And thank you again so much for your time, as busy as you are.
Thank you, Vic. And Jeremiah is one of my Staff Sergeant Workman is one of my heroes in life. Yeah, for a lot of reasons, in and out of combat.
Yeah, he's a very special individual. We've had him on the show twice. Yeah, just an unbelievably just a really genuine person, and yeah, I've really cherished the short time I've had to know him. Well, so let's get into it. If you wouldn't mind, if just please state your name, your rank at the time of Operation Fallujah, years of service at that point, and just what your billet, your role was, just sort of your billet description for your time there.
Sure. Colonel retired Willie Buhl, enlisted in the Marine Corps in 1981. I was a lieutenant colonel and the commanding officer of Task Force 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines in November of 2004 when the 1st Marine Division was assigned the task to clear the city of Fallujah.
Right, sorry. And then, so what brought you to the Yellow Footprints? I mean, you basically are a Cold War warrior who fought the the teeth of Al Qaeda and the insurgency. What was that? What was it like in the early '80s that brought you?
Great question. I grew up with a Cold War Marine dad who enlisted in '53 at the end of the Korean War, and was a radio operator, crew chief on C-130s, and was over Cuba during the Cuban Missile Crisis with a plane full of grunts in the back. So I grew up as from, say, I guess 3 years old or so. I knew what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a Marine like my dad, my uncle, my brother enlisted after I did. So that's what the primary reason I joined the Marine Corps. And I would say that when people ask me that, I more so say what I stayed in the Marine Corps for. So they send you a letter at the end of your time. The Secretary of the Navy sends you a letter, and mine is 34 years, 6 months, and 14 days. Well, I stayed in the Marine Corps because of the Marines I served with and sailors, and the Battle of Fallujah II, epitomizes the people that I stayed in to serve with and be a part of.
Yeah, definitely I completely 100% understand that sentiment. Sorry, I did 20, but the thing that always kept me wanting to come back was just looking at those men and women to my left and right, and just not wanting to let go of that. I think that's why I sucked so bad here in the NCR, um, as a cubicle gnome, because I
Uh,
couldn't see anybody other than my screen, and yeah, I just sort of fell apart. There. But I guess one of the questions we have on here is where did you serve? But like, probably a better
yes.
question is where didn't you serve?
Well, there are plenty of places I didn't serve, but the Marine Corps sent me all over the world. Obviously, a lot of time in the Middle East. I am probably describing myself mostly as a West Coast Marine, with a lot of I had 10 years in the 1st Marine Division. I was on I&I duty in Ventura with a heavy weapons company in 223, also co-located with the Seabees there, which was a unique exposure and formative experience for me. I did a tour in Lejeune. I did 4 MU deployments. I deployed to Panama for 6 months as a rifle company commander in 1-6. I was out in Desert Shield Storm, Somalia. I participated in the March Up in OIF 1, and then came back as a battalion commander for OIF 2, hence our discussion. A couple of other odds and ends. I was the barracks CO in Keflavik, Iceland. The
Wow.
second to last one there. The Polar Bear 6 was my call sign. I was very fortunate to serve in New York City on the Council of Foreign Relations. Worked for Secretary of Defense Robert Gates in the SecDef's office, and a lot of great time at Quantico at the Crossroads, mostly in school capacity. But the most blessed duty I had in my career was CO of the Wounded Warrior Regiment, where I got to have a hand in assisting the commandant, taking care of all the wounded, ill, and injured Marines and their families, the Marine Corps.
That's amazing, sir. Yeah, I can only imagine what a rewarding, but yet sometimes heartbreaking experience it must have been for you. Excuse me, really quick. Sorry, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Dog's going nuts.
Okay. No worries. What kind of dog do you have, Vic? I have a greyhound.
We have 3 rescues. Two from Puerto Rico, and then this maniac from just on the other side of the Mason-Dixon she's up in Maryland. Um, she's wonderful. She's probably uh, our 2 pit bulls, they call them nanny dogs, but this mutt here just watches over our boys. It's She does some parenting too. It's really funny. Um, but she's also upset because they just went off to swim, and so I think she's, I don't know, giving them some final coordinating instructions or something.
Okay.
Um, well, sir, so speaking of your time in New York, and again, I want to sort of branch off of the templated question is, so one was, where were you on September 11th? It's something that is stuck in my mind. God willing, it'll be there, until I die. But then for you, then having gone back, if you could talk to both of those sort of bookends of it, where you were on 9/11 and what it was like coming back
Yeah.
after your combat experience, coming back to New York.
So I was a student. I was a senior major at Command and Staff College, and we had morning seminar. And when we would take a seminar break, we normally would turn the TV on that was in every classroom. And when we did, the first tower was on fire on the scene. We would tune into CNN or one of those stations, and it obviously got everyone's attention very quickly. A crowd of us looking around the television, and literally as we were watching the first Trade Center building on fire, the second aircraft hit the second tower, and everyone looked at each other in the room, and we knew it was no longer some sort of accident. And we
Yeah,
had an all yeah, go ahead, I'm
go ahead,
sorry.
sir. Oh, I
Yeah,
was
we
just
had an
saying,
yeah,
I was a platoon commander. I just plussed up to be the company XO at Third Tracks. And it was just a very typical morning, PT, everybody's sort of coming in, getting ready for formation. And somebody said, "Hey, someone flew a plane into the World Trade Center," and I was thinking of like a private Cessna or something, and just thinking like,
yeah,
"What an idiot! Like, like who, what kind of pilot that they given licenses? The guy can't like just fly into a building." Anyhow, we get down to formation, and literally our company commander's like, "Everybody get." And this is back, before there are TVs everywhere. The only one really we had was in the common area at the barracks. They said to get up to the common area of the barracks. And same thing, I walk through the door, the first tower's on fire, and then we see the second tower hit. And then the battalion commander called all the company commanders in, and within an hour, because the Camp Delmar, so we were right off the five, they had
yeah,
everybody
yes,
go. Yeah, everybody go to the armory. We loaded up, geared up. We had designated marksmen on the rooftops, and then we were trying to figure out if we were going to have to go to San Onofre, and they ended up sending LAR over from Polgus. But yeah, they thought we were gonna have to splash the Vicks to guard the waterways to the power plant. It was just insane.
yeah, yeah. And we look back and people think, wow, we overreacted in some ways, we underreacted in others. In Japan, when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, the Western United States suddenly, there was there was panic.
Hmm.
Um, but we knew, all of us at school there knew that our lives had changed. Um, we knew we immediately, I believe, um, had a good sense, a strong sense of, we had just gone through strategy and policy and all those, deep think, big think coursework. And I said, oh, this is going to change our lives. And it certainly did.
Yeah, so what was it like then coming back to New York after your tours?
That was very powerful. My uncle worked in New York City and was three buildings away from the trade centers, and made it on foot all the way to Grand Central Station that
Jeez.
day. So I had a close, and I lived with my aunt and uncle for that year. They lived in Westchester County, just outside the city. But I spoke to many firsthand witnesses over the time. And of course, you can't visit the 9/11 memorial um, site there without a profound sense of the weight of it, the loss, all that meant to the nation and the world at the time. Yeah, so it was a powerful thing. And I've traveled a lot around the country, our country, but I'd argue that New Yorkers, particularly people that live in and around the city, they're as or the most patriotic Americans in the country because they lived through, an attack on the homeland. My next door neighbor in Stafford was a colonel in the army and was wounded in the Pentagon
Mm,
strike. And he came home that morning and in the early hours of the morning and knocked on my door and asked me if I would just sit and talk to him for a few minutes. And he was dirty and he had carried people out of the rubble and he was shaken. And I felt a little uncomfortable because I was a mere major and he was a full colonel. So it was my next door neighbor. It was a powerful day for us. I'm just talking about it now. I feel that emotion this many years later.
yeah, man. I can only imagine. So yeah, that's one of the things that we don't, because it is easy so much to obviously internalize, as I just did, but also to focus on the towers. Um, but the proximity of where you were is really fascinating to me, and I'm gonna imagine how visceral it is for you. But to be essentially in the NCR, as you said, going through PME, learning about strategery and what it is to be a field grade officer, and not only in the Marine Corps but in the joint force as a whole, and then to have those attacks happen. Um, yeah, I can only imagine that that's still, the adrenaline still gets
It
flowing on that.
it was powerful, and, I 2 days later, I drove up to see the Pentagon, and it was still burning. 2 days later, the fires were not quenched yet, and, there was smoke coming out of it, and the skid marks where the aircraft more or less skidded into the Pentagon. And then serving there years later in Secretary Gates' office, I would frequently take guests of the secretary or the assistant secretary. I would escort them on tours from time to time, and we would always go to the spot where the plane had impacted the little chapel there, etc. So yeah, I mean, there are others who my experience is nothing compared to theirs. People that might have been in those buildings or lost loved ones in the buildings, but it was powerful, and it is to this day and this moment in time with me.
Yes, sir, understood. Um, so then what was that like then? So you said that you knew things were gonna change. Um, in what ways did they change? So, I'm assuming you finished out school. They didn't short tour you, at PME, did they?
They didn't short tour me for command and staff college, but I was fortunate to be selected for the advanced warfighting course. Um, in fact, uh, I'm having
Was that
obviously
saucer?
it is the
Okay.
School of Advanced Warfighting. Thank you, Vic. And so I started off as a student at the School of Advanced Warfighting, and then there was rumor afoot that the MEF was short of planners, and sure enough, 9 of us were selected to augment the planning effort out in Iraq and Kuwait initially, and then Iraq. And so we were sent to Camp Pendleton. Uh, Bierman, Furness,
Mm,
King, most general officers now retired or still serving. Um, we went out and folded into the MEF at the division wing and uh, logistics and at headquarters of the MEF. And I became a planner in future ops, the G5 at the MEF. And about halfway through the final 6 weeks before the invasion, I was directed to form a mobile command post, a jump CP for the MEF-CG General Conway, which turned out to be 2 LAV-C squareds and a couple of marked vehicles and a heavy machine gun section.
And that's what you rolled with in OIF-1.
Yes, we would fly to, or excuse me, drive to a some designated link-up point, the MEF-CG. We'd create a hasty landing zone for General Conway. He would fly in sometimes with the sergeant major, his chief, whomever, and we would then take the CG around to visit, RCT and battalion headquarters, Task Force Tarawa, etc., wherever he wanted to go. Then create another LZ and fly him back to the main. And we did that every day and put about 6,800 miles on those LAVs on the march up from the Kuwait border to Baghdad.
Yeah, yeah. With all of I mean, with just the speed and tempo that we were maintaining, I could only imagine that was no easy task. So then, what was it like then? So you come back, um, and at that point, then you are officially part of the FMF, or do you go to a B billet or anything after?
So I was command slated while I was forward deployed,
Okay.
and I saw that on an Allmar, all nav, and actually it was an Allmar, and so I knew that I was headed for a battalion, and initially it was 2-1, but there was some discussion. The CO of there was a swap, and I wound up being redesignated for 3-1, and was fortunate enough to be able to get a chance to meet Lou Cropperata, who I had actually met a few times when I had taken General Conway to visit 3-1. But I got to sit down and talk with Lou, and we began the early discussions for a change of command. And I returned in May in time to graduate from SAW. They gave us OJT experience for the portion of the course, and I graduated and then had 6 days to get my family to Camp Pendleton to assume command of 3-1. So it was a hustle.
Yeah,
To
and
do
then
that.
you're moving from Quantico to Cali. I did the exact opposite in I think it was July. I got back and I had done a drug deal with the monitor to keep me at the battalion for the push, but that I would have to take whatever shit sandwich he had available. And so I went and was a recruiting station OPSO in Atlanta, but
Ooh,
I had 3 days to find a place to live and then make movement after I got back because
yeah.
it had gapped. They had moved the previous guy, so it was a gapped billet. In recruiting, there's no such thing, and so
Yeah.
yeah. So that very similar. So we may have crossed paths on I-40 at one point.
We might have. We were making time with a full load with a
Yes, sir.
family. Yeah.
So then you get, then, well, I guess how early then upon assuming command did you know you'd be going back?
Well, I took the CG. We took the CG around to speak to all the battalion. He spoke to every battalion, squadron, regimental headquarters. He spoke to every headquarters entity in the MEF. And the initial speeches were congratulations, and you're the nation's assault force, you're the 911 force, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to go back to the United States, rearm, refit, retrain, and get ready for whatever the next big. And about halfway through the victory tour, we started to realize the general was starting to get distinct signals that the MEF was actually going to come back and relieve the army in the Al Anbar province. So I knew then. I knew in Iraq that I would be back. And then the scheduling, the TEEP was worked out. I checked into First Marines. I had the most wonderful regimental commander on the planet Earth, John Tulin. And we started talking about, where the TEEP was going. And 3-1 had deployed back to back from a MEU, a hot turnaround, less than 6 weeks, and it redeployed for OAF1. And so there were decisions made at higher levels that we would have a slight stagger and would join the division when it redeployed about 90 days into its deployment. It was a unique thing. So I joined the First Marines. We went back to redeploy 90 days after my parent regiment had already deployed with the main portion of the division. Which was challenging because we were left I was the senior man in the camp. This is before we had the RBE system that we know today.
Mm-hmm.
And that this is, I'm telling you everything here. We had a murder in Deer Park the first night. I'm the rear party commander. And we had a water main break in the middle of the lower portion of the camp at Camp Horno that had 4 or 5 feet of water.
Jeez.
Yeah. So I mean, my first night, welcome aboard. You're the rear regimental rear CO. And I had a woman murdered in a park right on the PFT course, and a giant flood. And I said, this is going to be a challenge. But the beauty of it was our parent headquarters, my buddies, brothers, were in contact with the enemy immediately, and I had a computer. I had a Cipro connection that I could literally sit at my desk and get the immediate sit reps coming from contacts. And so I had really good understanding and visibility on all the trends and everything that was occurring in the battle space I was soon to deploy to.
And then when did you after you arrive in country, you rip TOA,
Right.
when did it start coming down that there was going to be this major offensive in Fallujah?
Well, we had Fallujah I in April and imminent resolve. And the First Marines was a key player in that, the lead, the division main effort for that. And so it was not a question of if, just when. We knew. And that influenced my stability and support operations TEEP plan that we initially inherited, the SASO. We're going to wave to them one more time than they think we can, and all of that. And I asked for armor and tracks to integrate into my SASO lane training. I asked for an additional period at George Air Force Base to use the family housing that was due to be demolished. These were expensive things, and I had several VTCs actually with General Mattis to explain to him through the screen long distance why I wanted to spend $60,000 of the division's money, or why did I think my battalion needed tanks and tracks, and none of the other division units had that up to this point. And but he approved them. He approved them, and we were we
Yeah.
thankful that we got the chance to do that. So it's a long answer to your question. we knew before we deployed that we were going to be a part of re-clearing the city. And all the intelligence that was coming out of the province at the time was highlighting the fact that this was an insurgent sanctuary.
And then, so when did you arrive, sir? When did you?
June, we ripped with 1-5, and their reports, the AO that we inherited, although it was a complex mosaic, but everything just validated all the presuppositions that we had. And I certainly dutifully did the coin reading and study program, and it was fantastic that General Mattis and the division had us. All the commanders do, and I had studied a lot of that over the years. But I hearkened back as a young captain at AWS back in those days, and the Huey City PMEs and the skeptical captain sitting in the office going, geez, we'll never do that again. And then I'm saying, oh boy, here we are about to do something very similar to that now. So Fallujah I, we echelon units in, and the division, the general, the CG held an OPT, a division OPT in the end of June, early July, and we reviewed the fact that we had echeloned our battalions in to invest the city at that point, and not an airtight. We didn't surround it in Fallujah I. I don't want to get into too much of that because I know you're focusing on the second battle, but the lessons learned from the units that participated informed us. And I paid careful attention, and I was fortunate to have that 3-month overlap with them, many discussions, and a very thorough OPT process, war gamed decisions that would position us for a north-south clear, deconflict our gun target line for combined arms. We were able to really dissect it and think about it carefully, which as opposed to Fallujah I, where it was reactive, we had units facing each other, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm talking a stream of consciousness here.
No, that's exactly what we're here for. So this is fantastic. When then did so? I mean, really, you land your boots on the ground barely 60 days since the conclusion of Fallujah I.
Right.
So those lessons learned clearly are still very uh they're still very real. This isn't, you're not talking in hypotheticals.
No.
What did you know that there was going to be an Operation Al-Fajr or at that time, or did that come down the pike later?
The formal order didn't come until, I believe, the October timeframe.
Okay.
Someone would have to cross-check that. But again, I knew shortly shortly after but I knew before I arrived that we were going to have to do it, and everyone there, all the key leaders in the division at every level, whether it was my rip with the battalion commander, Brennan Byrne in 1-5, or others, we knew that we were going to have to do it. And again, the visceral daily validation was that people were coming from the city out, insurgents were coming out to harm us, to harm the local population. We watched them fortify the city. You couldn't drive around the city without being fired upon. We had to build a military bypass around it and travel at night to avoid large direct fire engagements. And there were times where we watched people attack us on UAS and would follow them back into the city. One that stands painfully in my mind was Stephen Rintamaki, one of our lance corporals, who was a tow gunner. There was a mule cart with a mule literally hitched to the cart on the side of the road. It was remotely detonated. It took Stephen's life. And we got a UAS over very quickly, and they saw a truck that was out of small arms range in Defilade, a Toyota truck, pull away and get to the MSR and come into South Fallujah. And they followed this truck all the way into the main square, the market square in Fallujah. And this man get up in the back of the truck and, raised his arms over his head, and a large crowd gathered around him. And of course, we couldn't hear anything, but it was clearly he was bragging about what he had just done. And hundreds of people surrounded the truck and were raising their hands, apparently chanting. And we watched this helplessly. We couldn't do anything about it, and this built over time. And we were attacked every day. A good day for 3-1 in the first 5 months of that deployment was a day where no one was hurt. I had 10 men killed in action in the first in the period before we cleared the city, and 23 in the city as a battalion task force. So it was very painful in that counterinsurgency, and it was complex counterinsurgency. It was at all levels. And we were doing many good things for the local population. We were doing all those things you'd want to see, the reconstruction and development. We also partnered with Iraqi military, National Guard, stand-up units, and had one of the more effective programs, such that General Petraeus and the Commandant, General Hagee came. Everybody wanted to come out and see the program, led by the 1st Marine Regiment, but in a compound that 3-1 was responsible to provide security for, and many of the instructor staff to come and see. So there's a lot more to it, and I could talk for hours, but we knew we were going to have to clear that city. Because it was compelling, attacks emanating from it daily, and through all intelligence sources, SIGINT, HUMINT, IMINT, all of it, we were confirming and reconfirming that daily.
Yeah, this is so fascinating. So then, in October, then, I guess, could you walk us through what you like, sort of when this is going to be a named operation, and this is how we're going to do
Yes.
it? Okay.
So as it began to late September, early October, we had we held a series of high-level discussions. We ran an OPT again with the division and regiment. We brought in some planners from the Army, and it began to take shape that this was going to be a deliberate clearing operation. And we determined to do some various shaping actions, deception for the most part, with a lot of operations in the south and east of the city, to get the enemy to believe that we were going to attack from there. And I just attended 2 weekends ago a 20th reunion of India Company out in Texas, India 3-1, put on by the Semper Fi Americas Front. It was the best reunion I think I've been to in terms of all the components of a successful reunion together. But many of the Marines talked about the fact that the enemy defenses were oriented in the wrong direction once we actually did the north-south clear. So, for a range of reasons, the deception ops were very successful. And so much so that Marines 20 years later, who were corporals and lance corporals and sergeants, were talking about it over a cup of bourbon at the, it's like, yeah, they thought it was coming from the south. But those deception ops were on 15 August. I had two men, PFCs, Hannon and Perez, killed by a SV bed in South Fallujah at a traffic control point we had established, TCP 7. So you beat your chest and you're proud, but there was a cost to everything, and that occurred. We also use these deception operations as mini combined arms refreshers for each of the rifle companies. So we got all the attachments: tanks, tracks, LAVs, air overhead, artillery if we needed it, certainly mortars, and we would probe, and not only did we get an opportunity, if they fire, troops in contact, legitimate, defending ourselves, but it would light up their comm networks. And so many benefits of that, as we probe them. And I put every company through that. At the platoon and reinforced platoon level, our gunner had put together a mount package for us that was blank and then live fire refresher course, and we ran every rifle platoon, much like the 200 series at 29 Palms. We ran every rifle platoon with supporting arms through a complete live fire refresher course, 2 days. And we did all our Iraqis that were embedded with us. That was there was some close
there's a
calls.
pucker factor there.
Yeah, no friendly, but there might have been a close call or two that got everybody's attention. But I had read over the years and heard from the Korea and Vietnam men the importance, and all my leaders growing up were, when I was a young enlisted Marine on up, were the importance of sustainment training in combat. That's like one of your last questions, and you've got to do that. You also have to figure out what your battle rhythm is to get people the appropriate rest, and it's a careful balance. But I had people falling asleep on post, and I'm going to have to take a stripe. I mean, you're putting everyone's lives on the line. There were two things I was ruthless about, and I'm the nicest guy on the planet. Ask Woody, ask anybody. Your PPE and your alertness on post. I mean, it's your life and it's everyone's lives. And I was ruthless with that. And when the Marines knew, they we had iron discipline in that area. And so while I'm thinking of it, we had an internet cafe, which was when we brought people from the forward FOBs to our main, they could wash their clothes, they could get some decent food, they could get a little bit of real sleep without having to do any kind of patrol or be under fire for the most part. The main FOB got hit often too, but not like the smaller forward ones. And they could communicate back home. The problem was we didn't realize that they were spending too much time in there and exhausting themselves communicating. So I had to create a log. We had to do them every the NJPs, the discussion, what is going on. We finally figured it out and had to ration their login time to make sure they were getting adequate rest. It's one of those little facts that might be useful somewhere for somebody.
Oh, for sure, sir. Yeah, I mean, especially as we're talking the lessons learned, and how those lessons learned apply to today's Marine Corps. Um, yeah, I that's gonna be a challenge for leaders here with this emerging generation.
the Navy just went through, with the two destroyer collisions. They revisited everything, including their rest plan. And it's no different for infantry in combat. And you don't always have that luxury, but 6 days in of active patrolling and on the front, followed by a 2 day period, with one day being a retraining day, a refresher, whether you re-zero your weapon, you do some marksmanship, you do battle drills, you go out and you do squad or tactics, etc. So we had a day where they trained, a day where they washed all their clothes, 2 days of food and 2 nights of good sleep, and then they were back out for 6 days. And it took us 2 months to slap the table that was the magic number of just enough high intensity counterinsurgency followed by recovery. In Fallujah, no, there was no, it was high intensity sustained combat. I was there for 17 days before I came back into the main fob from my first. It was spaghetti. It was like the best spaghetti I had ever eaten in my life. But so when you have to surge, you surge. But if you can control it, that's what we came away with.
Fascinating, fascinating. What was it like then, sir? So you mentioned you were doing some shaping ops. Based on the timeline, it sounds like you had about 45 days between being told this is happening and then when you LD'd.
That sounds about right, Vic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were the
And
shaping ops nested within the overall campaign plan, or were they just something you just okay.
Absolutely it was. There was, and I'll offer here and there tactfully, I had a couple of disagreements with things personally as a battalion commander. One was we did a tank reconnaissance, tank and LAR at the north end of the city, maybe 6 days before the actual assault.
Oh, wow.
To reproof our our plan of attack for the initial penetration. And I did not think that was a good idea, but as it turned out, ultimately it was too late for the enemy to certainly redirect fortifications of any kind. But they went to work shortly after April, and they were deliberate and built up formidable. We watched cranes lifting Jersey barriers and things. They had that much time to fortify that city. So I mentioned the North Armored Reconnaissance, which had a long pause. It's the only time I loaded a tank round in my M1 tank, and because there was this machine gun, a medium machine gun shooting ass. It was like hail on your roof hitting the tank, and the gunny in there assured me, Gunny Jewel, same name as me, just a J instead of a B. He's like, don't worry, sir, unless they have a Gucci, RPG, we're going to be okay. And it took a long time to get clearance to fire the main gun and silence this machine. We did. It took a long time to work up the air as well. And you're feeling vulnerable sitting there for a long period of time under fire in a tank. But they're amazing, and I'm a big tank fan. And I'll tell you more when we go a little further into the talk about tactics and such.
Yeah, I'd love to hear the mech armor integration piece, especially as you reference some of the more historic urban battles before Al-Fajr. So you'd mentioned, sir, that the shaping operations, although effective, still came at a cost. What were some of your thoughts, knowing essentially what your LD time was going to be, and as you looked at, like you'd mentioned, refining your battle rhythms, ensuring a rest plan when you could. What were some of the things that you were thinking about making sure that the Marines didn't sort of psychologically culminate prior to actually? Because did the Marines know the
Yes,
timeline? Okay, okay.
yes, and as we got close, all the senior leaders, General Natonsky, Colonel Shuck, came out and spoke to the assembled battalion, um, and so yes, they knew. We knew. We were disaggregated. We had two rifle companies in the Garma Shahabi area, which was 10, a little more than 10 clicks away from Fallujah, between 10 and 20 clicks, depending on where you were. And then we had a rifle company at Abu Ghraib prison and in an old Iraqi training base where I mentioned about us doing an Iraqi training center where we train the resurrected National Guard. Uh, so getting a company that had responsibly been, it was Lima Company for the external security of Abu Ghraib prison through some combined arms training, because they really didn't do anything like that in the first 5 months, was a very important component. Both the other rifle companies, Indian Kilo, through action at the small unit level and two reps through the traffic control points, were able to thoroughly rework all those combined arms procedures very expertly. So and I don't want to use the term weak link in the chain, the undertrained portion component was Lima out there. And so that was a huge plus for us to get them through that training. We composited the battalion about 6 days before the clear. We did a rock drill, we did rehearsals. We actually held a chariot race with scrapper carts that had probed our perimeters. We would go out with a QRF, warn the scrappers, if we see you again here, we're going to confiscate your horse and cart. And we had, the old Instamatic cameras and a little book, and we'd look them up in the book. And if the guilty party had been there before, we took it's like the game wardens, we took away impounded it. And I had a small stable. I think we had 28 horses and mules.
Wow.
By the Mike Staley, who was his last command was a CLR-1, our premier warfighting. He was Brahma 4, and he's like, sir, I go, find some hay, Mike. Support the local economy. Use the SERP funds. Anyway, we had a little fun with it. We let them dress up. They had to wear their PPE, but we let them dress up in kit. And I'll send you a picture if you haven't seen anything.
Please do. That would be great for the film. Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, it was fantastic. The Marines we had a prayer, we had a national anthem. I mean, we did it right, and everybody was in kit. We were spread out, and every company had a chariot team. Weapons company were the champions. And I mean, they had tridents, and they used the special services gear, and creatively. I'll send you a picture or two. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But they had a good laugh together, and it took a little of the tension off, because we knew what we were going to do. It was going to be the personal, professional tests of our lives, and it was. It absolutely was. And 23 men that enjoyed that chariot race gave their lives for the country, for our country, and their brothers in the coming days after. So you've got to be able to laugh out there and find some moments, or you'll go crazy.
Yeah, you're wound too tight to even be effective. What was that like then, sir? So you said that 6 days before you aggregated the battalion again, did you just basically displace from your outposts?
We did. We consolidated on the main FOB. We were relieved in place by Army units.
Okay.
And 1-4 sent Bravo 1-4, Sam Carrasco, company commander, up from Najaf area. 1-4 also plussed us up with some engineers, with one of their facts, Wombat. We got a JTAC team. So we got some attachments from 1-4 and other places in those immediate days right before the clear. And
So you weren't
uh,
telegraphing by displacing those outposts. You had a little bit of a battle hand over there.
I'll tell you what, we were telegraphing a long way out, but we were telegraphing that it was going to be a South attack. We
Gotcha.
had to tell the population, this is one
Yeah.
of the biggest points. One of the principal determinants of the challenge of Fallujah I was the political, strategic level, where, as I understand it, the British, Tony Blair had told the president, President Bush, that if we, the civilian casualties were going to cause the British to pull out, the UK to pull out of the coalition. So,
Mm.
that was one of the big lessons, was to get the non-combatants out of the city. Knock, knock, hello, Israel, right now,
Yeah.
watching this unfold. So,
And was that a information campaign? Was that a pamphlet
absolutely.
drop? All those things?
Everything,
Okay.
television, radio, pamphlets, city council meetings for months actually before.
Okay.
And humanitarian issues to the local cities. I had 5 small cities in my battle space. I was the military mayor of 5 little city, and we provided supplies to those, to Garma, Shahabi, Kandari, Nasawa Salam, uh, these cities, and encouraged the families to take their relatives from Fallujah. We told them we were coming.
So
And
yeah.
yeah, go ahead. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
I'm sorry. So basically, everyone knew that this was happening,
They knew.
and yeah. So
They
what
knew.
was that like then? So what was your understanding of the enemy then? Obviously, you said all intelligence was showing them their activity, their movement. They were building the city up. Was this one of these things where um you don't want to get complacent. You don't want to essentially buy into American exceptionalism. You're trying to instill in your Marines that these are. I guess what was it like? What was it like for you to have the Marines understand the the enemy on the other side of the fence, as it were?
Well, that's a great question. I think so you've got to maintain your humanity, and leaders are responsible for that. But sometimes junior leaders and young Marines can influence their senior leaders in just the opposite way. So earlier in the counterinsurgency period, a young corporal named Dale Berger, his a squad in India company was attacked by a remote detonated IED. Fortunately, no Marines were hurt or killed. They assumed the trigger man was in this guard tower at a abandoned oil for food warehouse from the UN oil for food program. And so Berger took his fire team. He was a fire team leader at the time, and he led from the front. He went up this spiral staircase to investigate the tower. It looked like something out of a Stalag 13 or something.
Right.
And up at the top was an insurgent who in fact was the trigger man, and he was crouched in out of view with a railroad spike in his hand, and he lunged at Berger as he was going up this spiral staircase, and the two of them locked arms and tumbled down the stairs. And Dale's covermen couldn't do anything for him because they were in a tight embrace. And there's some uncertain moments until Dale maps him, overpowers him, and turns the spike around and puts it against the man's throat. And so the man finally lets go and gives up. And Willie, Lieutenant Colonel Buhl, the battalion commander, who has been so frustrated having men, hurt and killed by these IEDs, i.e., Rintamaki, who I told you about.
Mhm.
I was actually angry with Berger, and I didn't realize it. Um, it we're talking to each other, and I'm like, "You had him dead to rights. Why didn't you put that spike into his neck?" And he looks at me. I must have raised my voice. I was emotional. He says, "Sir," like in shock. He's like, "Sir, I thought you'd want to." I thought we'd want to interrogate him and find out what his network and who's supplying him and all the right kinds of things that a battalion commander would tell the
Right.
corporal. The corporal was telling the battalion commander. And I've told the story. I've told it recently at the squad leader course graduation about how young leaders can influence senior leaders sometimes. And I'm just giving it as a case in point. And Berger is a posthumous Silver Star recipient and got badly hurt and snuck out of the hospital, Bravo Surgical, took a logistics run back to the battalion headquarters and showed up with nothing, bandages, and said, my Marines need me and I've got to go back. And, we got the sergeant major and I and his company commander, first the chief, BAS chief, Frank to me, big discussion, surgeon. I can move my arm. I'm fine. He's stitched. He's bandaged. Yeah, we let him go back. His platoon, his squad leader had been wounded in Kazovac, and so Dale's killed in action a couple of days later. After that, at rescuing brothers trapped in a house. But so I'm all over the place as I normally am, and thank God you're keeping track of all this, Vic. But so the passions are out there in that counterinsurgency period. You got to maintain your humanity. You have to follow the ROE. You've got to be the good guys. You got to do the right thing. And at any one time, the senior people can be the most vulnerable and prone to mistakes. So it takes a whole team, and you've got to have trust. You got to surround yourself with people that can step back and talk to you and correct you and tell you need to get sleep. That isn't the way we do things. When we first started searching houses, the men were overzealous and would pop things open with their bayonets and make a mess. And we had a talk about it. I brought the leaders in and said, "How do you feel when you've ever been searched by customs at an airport and they tear your suitcase up and then leave you there to, we got to be better, or we're going to make enemies in our routine operations. They're going to be more willing to help the people that are trying to hurt us. We're going to turn them against us." It took that sort of thought process every day, all the way to game time, clearing the city. However, clearing the city was another story. That at this point, if somebody put their hands up, we're going to take prisoners. They came out and surrendered. And we took 1,400 in the city, a little over that. But we're not gonna. We're going to give them a reasonable opportunity to do so. We'll bring the PSYOPs vehicle up, put somebody on the net. Couple of minutes, nobody comes out. I'm putting that bulldozer to work. I'm bringing a tank up to suppress them. If it's a large structure, I'm calling an airstrike in on it. If I'm taking any fire from it, there's no questions asked. I'm ruthless. And with some of the Marines, that was an easy transition. With others, it was a little harder. And after a few days, that was a standard, as I just described it to you. But we had some men killed in the first few days. That there was some of the latent wave that one more time. Also, we did not get we followed in support for the initial penetration of the 2nd of the 7th. So we couldn't control any of the aviation fires, the combined arms. It was all 2-7s control. When we did the battle handover, suddenly all my facts got to work. We had 287 terminal controls. Aero, amazing. I think we're the most aviation-centric infantry battalion up to now.
So let's talk a little bit about that piece, sir. So Could you sort of define your sector, what the order of battle was for you, and then what mission specifically, if as you remember it, you were given?
We moved to our, it took 24 hours to get into our attack position north of the city, which was north of a train station.
So it wasn't
Um,
at a Camp Fallujah. You had an assault position outside of your compound.
out in what would almost be described as a sort of an open desert plain area outside of the city to the north.
Okay.
And it took 24 hours to move everybody up there, to move the big division, two full up RCTs up north of that city. It was quite a thing to mass that combat power there. Uh, we had limited rehearsals with the army. They arrived 2 days before. We did a lot of face to face. We did a little look on the map. Their three had been out for the OPTs, but there was just no rehearsals. And I had a fantastic engineer platoon. They were reservists who had been mobilized from Roanoke, Virginia. And but the day before, the regimental commander determined he wanted the breach to be done by the regimental engineer company. The problem with that, unfortunately, two things occurred. One, the CO and his first sergeant somehow had a late start moving to the attack position and didn't get through a traffic control point. The division MPs wouldn't let them through at a certain point. If you weren't cleared, they just wouldn't let anybody interfere with the traffic flow. They never got to their company. So it was a first lieutenant and a gunny.
Jeez.
And so that was a problem. We changed horses the night before, no rehearsals with them, nothing. Suddenly they're the breaching unit. And I had worked it, for a week with the rifle company that was going to be the support by fire for them, et cetera. And without getting into a great deal of detail, it was disconcerting, and it was my boss's call, and that's what we did. So the other component to this challenge, and I think it's a little known story in the whole battle, was it was phase line April. It was the east-west northernmost hard stand road north of the city. And it had a planter, a concrete, turned out to be reinforced concrete planter box that palm trees were planted in. And by God, the tanks couldn't drive over it. And it was enormously challenging to
Mm.
blow lanes in it. And the regimental headquarters couldn't do it. The engineer, and so the CO called for us to get up and reinforce and get it fixed. I sent my rifle company commander, Brian Heatherman, over there, the support by fire company, to help with a little senior leadership. And it was some hours, which then set our timeline for the
Yep.
penetration off from a 0-1 to like 0-5. Close to 0-5 is when we actually, no kidding, started getting. Um, Now, here's a personal opinion. That not in books, but I think that actually ultimately played to our strengths because we had such a tremendous combined arms advantage. It was actually an advantage to do it in the daylight
Mm.
hours. I think we got more out of that than the enemy did. This is an opinion.
Mhm.
Anyway, it played out as it played out, but there were some uncertain moments. The regimental commander went up personally to look what's going on up here, found out for himself. And so we had some hiccups. We changed horses midstream. We didn't do the rehearsals. We ran into an unforeseen challenge with breaching. Um, but it ultimately happened. We got one lane. We started pouring tanks and Bradleys through it, and then we got a second, and it turned out okay. Um, there was some uncertain time with enemy indirect fire. We brought in AC-130 gunships and some airstrikes. I had no control of that. And you know the unit in contact has to be the one to have authority. That's a takeaway for me that you know it was we lost a couple of men in that first day because of that, I believe.
Mm.
Mhm.
And
You
so,
know, it's one of those you can't say for sure,
yes,
but we
sir.
took indirect fire that we were unable to respond to because we didn't
Mhm.
own the battle space.
And that was 2-7, sir. That was that had opcon of those,
Yes, yes.
and they were to your front.
They were. Jim Rainey, who is he's in charge of Army Future Command. He's a four-star general. Great man. Obviously, highly proficient officer. Good people. And you know, I have very little, nothing but really good to say. Um, they did a lot for us. But if the armor penetration extends too far away from the supporting infantry, there's a decision to be made. You either have to, hold on, I have a noise behind me.
Yep, no problem, sir.
You either have to uh, bypass and you know, expedite you know, the follow and support role, or the tanks will outrun their support and be vulnerable, potentially very vulnerable. He had some infantry in the form of scouts in his Bradleys, but they're and this might be informative for since we don't have tanks any long at the moment in the Marine Corps. The the Army did not get out of their Bradleys or their tanks. They just stayed mounted. And so they were very concerned about not having infantry with them. And I was very concerned about bypassing units in my rear in structures that could then interdict my logistics, attack me from behind, and cause all kinds of issues. So we had to deliberately clear to those multi-story, you know, multi-dimensional structures, and yet maintain that support role for the army in front of us. You understand the problem? Yeah. And so it was a lot of back and forth with Jim and I on that first day. It was a tough day, commander to commander, um, because of that. But the battle handover was smooth, efficient, and from that point on, I had full control. I had a tank company minus Bravo second tanks, um, and so we had enough to support two companies. Um, I had I had hoped that we would get a little more support from the Army, but they were unwilling to put anyone on support of us take on. So we had to make do with two platoons. We had the CO and Exos tank as well. And in fairness, 3-5 certainly needed the platoon of tanks that they had for any unforeseen challenges. Um, they were on our initially right rear flank. So I'm talking up a stream. After the battle handover, we had full control of the battle space. We had our own tanks. We had division D9s. Uh, we had a track a company in support of us, and we had an armored ambulance company that was outstanding for Casevac in direct fire situations. And we controlled the battle space for the remainder of the period. It was about 9 days of sustained combat, and then a few more in the re-clear, et cetera, period. I was forward for 17 days before I came back to our fall.
And so that was you mentioned that was a north to south movement. You did essentially, was it kind of forward passage lines through 27 from when
Yes,
they hit their limit of advance.
yes, which was the government center of Fallujah. And the initial concept of operations was two RCTs, 1 and 7, attacking north-south. There was a phase line Henry, which was a north-south MSR that ran right down the center of the city. If you look at the map, it is roughly, well, 1/3, 2/3. We had sort of 1/3 of the city in our line of our axis of attack. Um, but it turned out that we got the predominance of some of the people that had traveled from out of the region. We got a lot of Saudis, and some Chechens and other. We had 16. The two confirmed 16 different countries among the
Wow.
combatants in our battle space. So it was, it's an ISIS light, if you will.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
we're talking what, like,
yeah,
Filipinos, probably in there. Did you have
Yeah, yes, some Indonesians,
Indonesians?
Filipinos,
Yeah,
everyone from the Arab world, a lot
yeah.
of South Asians. We had the stands.
Okay.
Um, mhm,
Yeah, when
um,
I was out, this was 07, 08. There were a lot of Albanians in our AO.
I don't remember any Albanians, but I wouldn't doubt it. And Turks. Um,
Yeah.
with the Horn of Africa, all of a wide range, and of mixed ability, and they were reinforcing right up to the attack. We had captured several that detained, was several that had literally just arrived and were untrained, and caught their initial syllabus to teach them how to operate their weapons and basic stuff.
Wow.
Um, yeah.
And so I guess the unofficial, official dates of Operation Al-Fajr go from 7 November to about 23 December. Um, what was that like? I mean, I guess from obviously multiple phases within the operation, but could you just sort of talk us through, like, phase one, the heavy fighting lasted X number of days, phase two, and then sort of
The,
clearing operations?
the heavy fighting lasted 9 days. And the initial plan had the 1st Marine Regiment advancing south to what was known as the Pizza Slice. You can see the geographic feature. It's where two roads intersect, going east-west, and it looks like a piece of pizza. And the plan was that the 1st Marines would pivot at that, and attack toward the Euphrates River, that runs adjacent to Fallujah, and that the 7th Marines would continue to attack north-south and all the way to the southern boundary of the city. What the way it transpired was that there was more resistance than anticipated for the 7th Marines, and we were ordered to just simply continue the attack south beyond the Pizza Slice all the way to the southern boundary. Before the actual attack, we had done an internal war game with the battalion staff and had questioned that we might have to continue attacking south. So I asked the two to request maps for the entirety of the city beyond the Pizza Slice. And I forget what phase line that is, east-west, but there was pushback, and I had to go to the G2, and who I knew, and talk to him about it personally. and really talk to him about it,
Yeah.
and say that it was I was gonna take it up if we didn't get it. I mean, it was an enormous amount of work for their shop to do that. I said, I'll send you people to help you do it, but I mean, I gotta have those. And oh God, thank God we did, because that's exactly how it played out. And we had those grid referenced photo maps down to the squad leader level with all the buildings numbered. And again, considering all those airstrikes, all the artillery we fired the Army's 120s every day to the first few days to his reserve. And then from about day 5 all the way through, he let me shoot everything he had. He also provided security along the north-south MSR Henry. So he basically provided a secure flank for us, so that leakers couldn't come through the 7th Marine sector into my rear. He kept that MSR open for logistics resupply, tank refuel, rearm, bulldoze, all the Kazovacs we ran, everything. So I'm putting some kudos in for the Army. He also got a little bored. I'm just going to use the term. They were coming to our stand-ups in the morning, and he says, we've been talking about it. We'd love to help you before you kick off your morning's attacks. We'll shape for you, and other terms used, but shape. I'll use the professional term. And he'd bring a tank company up and shoot for 45 minutes at any heat signatures or military, targets of military importance, and for us before we kicked off a dismounted attack. And wow, what a great resource that proved to be. He also combined his BAS with mine.
Mm.
We had 650 plus Purple Hearts for the deployment in 3-1. And that was a life-saving thing, that
Yeah.
all his BAS resources he combined with ours. It was a game changer for us. His medics were fantastic, and he had robust supplies, blood, everything. And we needed it. Brad Castle, 17 units of blood coming out of the hell house.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't have enough. Yes, we did.
Wow,
We didn't
that's
have to go.
amazing, sir. Well, sir, I'm getting a notification. We got about 5 minutes.
We're gonna wrap it up. Yeah.
This has been amazing. I am so thankful for this. I can honestly listen to you talk about this all day.
I'm sorry I rambled. Yeah.
No,
So
zero rambling, sir. Zero. This is
9 days, 9 days of high intensity work. And then we had a re-clear, and then we set conditions for the humanitarian assistance, which in all my experience, the thing I was most impressed with was what we did as a division and regiment to get ready for the humanitarian piece at the end. The purple fingers and the resettlement, the initial biometrics at the checkpoints, the repopulation and restoration of the city, all of that stuff. So the patience and professionalism at the front end, the toughness and the grit of the clearing of that city, and then the humanity at the end for the people that just wanted to go on with their lives. We had to take these people out of the city and return it to them. And I think I hit most of the high points for you there. Those bulldozers with tanks were and I sat on a panel with a man who was an EWO company commander, and he talked about combined arms with blade tanks. We could have been in the same place, 70 years earlier or then, he and I. And the improvisation of the Marines when they ran out of specific ordnance. So you keyhole with then the small, and then you send a thermobaric in. You tie Bangalore's up with a time fuse and blow the side out. You have to run in with suppression with a satchel charge and get out and blow it down. Whatever they needed to do, they did. We'll have to do that again. We will fight in an urban environment again. We've gotta maintain it in the PME programs. And I think I'm going to conclude by telling you finally that it was the personal and professional tests of all of our lives. And the 9/11 generation measured up and did everything the country and Corps could have asked
Well,
of them.
I couldn't agree with you more, sir. I think one of the things that I will stay with me forever, and I was just so impressed, and you mentioned this, but that ability for the Marines to shift from kinetic operations to humanitarian assistance. I mean, this is something that it's not in the pamphlet, and for them to have that professionalism and that care, you know, whether it's because of their own humanity or just the fact that they um love the Corps and love each other so much that when you tell them to shift gears, obviously it's hard, obviously it's difficult, you can't just do it unless you're the Marine Corps who has done it in the past. And I can't, again, I tell you how much they exceeded all of my expectations when I told them that, hey, these guys that we're fighting, we now have to
Yeah.
provide stability for them to return their lives to normal.
Yeah, one last, I said, this is the last. Before we deployed, we had 134 Marines that did not have time to make that deployment, which would have been a third in a row for them. And we brought, the Sergeant Major and I brought the entire group of them out in a formation, and we asked them to please extend just to make the deployment, because we were taking large numbers of brand new Marines coming in from SOI. And literally, as I'm talking to the battalion, 4 or 5 Bluebird buses roll up, and the latest, it's Friday, the graduating class came in from SOI, and they're stumbling and getting out of their sea bags and things, and the platoon sergeants are yelling at them. And I said, that is why I need you to extend. And 118 of them, lance corporals, a few sergeants, extended. And that was the magic that executed what you just described back to me. That judgment and love and leadership that was there, restraint, aggression, skill, experience, that was the magic that made the difference.
Sir, this has been so great. Again, I could listen to you talk about this
I wore
really
you
all
out,
night.
Vic. I wore you out.
No, this is so good, sir, and thank you so much for taking the time to do
My
this.
honor.
I can't wait to incorporate this audio into the video. This is going to be fantastic.
I'll
So,
send a couple of pictures to you
okay,
of some
I
charioteers. Yeah,
please,
yeah, and the microcosm of it all is that Hell House experience. If you've
Mhm.
read of it, know of it,
Yeah,
that's where we put it all together. Yeah.
fantastic, sir. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, and we'll be in touch.
Semper Fi. Thank you, Vic.
December 3rd is Giving Tuesday. Now that you've stuffed yourself for Thanksgiving and spent a lot of money on Black Friday deals, show your support to the Marine Corps Association's mission to enhance the professional development of our Marines by donating to us on Giving Tuesday. Your donation will fuel the Marines' professional growth, recognize their achievements, and prepare them for today's challenges. Give back to those who serve. Your generosity makes a lasting impact. Text give the number 2 MCA to 41444 to give today. That's give the number 2 MCA to 41444. Scuttlebutt is a production of the Marine Corps Association. You have heard the voices or contributions from Major Vic Rubel, USMC retired, Nancy Lichman, William Truding, and our guest. Ty Frazier is the editor, sound engineer, and technical producer. The Marine Corps Association is not an agency of the U.S. government. The opinions expressed in this episode are the personal views of the participants and do not reflect the official position of the United States Marine Corps, the Department of Defense, or the Marine Corps Association.